Word Balloon, celebrating 16 years of excellence for you. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another Word Balloon comic book conversation, although maybe not as many comic books in this conversation, but a very strange and wonderful journey we're going to take today with today's author. My name's John Suntress. I know you enjoy my show. If I may, very quickly at the beginning of the show, I've had our guest on, Nigel Collins, the fine author, an excellent writer that I've followed for years, but I'm really excited about his current book that is available now at Amazon and where I'm assuming wherever people can find prose and digital books, including your website. Am I correct, Nigel?
I don't even have a website. That shows you what a good marketer I am. Basically, the thing is, I can buy books cheaper, and there's than the public, but it's easier for them to buy it from Amazon.
Sure.
Basically, that's what it boils down to. You break even. It's the same amount of money I'm going to make either way. So let them do the work.
Well, and you've created this lovely ad for yourself that I used to promote
this is a good time to bring this up. I did not create that ad.
Oh, please.
I'm going to put a plug in for my publisher. His name's Ted Lerner. He's a local lad from Allentown who's lived in the Philippines for about 25 years. And he has a nonprofit organization called the Corregidor Peace Institute. And they have a printing division. And they printed, CPI Press printed Travels with Mary Jane, and also two books that Ted's written. One's called Hey Joe, which is a kind of a famous book. It was, he had a column in an English language newspaper, a business newspaper, for a long time. And it's just a collection of his columns. And they're really good. It's like, a wide-eyed American's view of a really unusual place, the Philippines.
Wow.
That's all the time I'm going to give him, but he's a good friend and he's a good publisher, and he created that ad.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And again, let's put the cover back up. So
this wasn't created by him. We hired an artist originally, but
well,
that's pictures.
The subject of the book is near and dear to my heart. I and you'll forgive me. I'll say a little bit about me in terms of the fact that I am a pot smoker, and I can appreciate this kind of travel journal and your various adventures over the years, and also being my age, I had a stepbrother that was 7 years older than me that I grew up with. And so, as much as, and this is a few years past where your story begins in 67, I always feel like the 60s kind of had a hangover during the 70s, and the culture kind of, stayed the same after everybody turned on and got aware and was a little more politically active and stuff. And it seeped into the Watergate years. And I remember the Watergate years very vividly, plus having my older stepbrother and driving around with him with his various teenage friends. And for younger people, that 70s show kind of rings true with my era, even though I was in Chicago, Illinois. But, yeah, these were kids that, they kind of dabbled a little in the counterculture, not as extensively as Nigel, but certainly admired people like Nigel that as an American traveled abroad and really had the experiences he did. Although I'm assuming you came from Canada, right? You grew up, you were growing up in Canada.
Oh, okay. I was born in England, in Bristol, where Long John Silver sailed from. And my parents immigrated to Canada when I was 10 with me. We lived there for 2 years, maybe, and then came to the United States. So I lived in the United States a long time.
That's cool. Well, again, this is great because it's very vivid. And I, back in 2000, made my first journey to Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah?
To experience back then legal weed and stuff, and they had the ability to be able to smoke and do it in a relaxed atmosphere. And the way you described the coffee houses in Amsterdam of the 60s, things hadn't changed much, it seems. And I love that. Again, also coming from Chicago, and I'm sure the same thing is in the Philly area and the various areas of Pennsylvania where around you grew up and everything. Just that great local bar scene and, just kind of classic joints. And a lot of the coffee houses really at the end of the day look like, the kind of hole in the wall bars that I grew up around and stuff. So there you go. Oh, good. All a couple of your friends are showing up. Don Stradley making a point that you're a big hit in Rockport. So right. That's awesome. But yeah, so really, this is a great chance, Nigel, to really hear about how it was. And also, am I right in terms of a lot of what your travel, and it's great. You really describe it well in that first chapter in terms of the people that you met and the idea of traveling around Europe to some of these countries and cities to score, of weed and everything. Were you inspired by that generation and it was an earlier generation, but that Europe on $5 a day? Because I love the ease and just the kind of like, hey, it really wasn't that big of a deal to head to Europe and,
I was at the baby boomer generation, born in 46. So basically, I lived through it all. I remember when I was maybe 11th grade, hearing about beatniks, and they had Maynard G. Krebs, who was on the TV, and,
Don't be jealous. Bob Denver for Gilligan before he was Gilligan. Sure.
It was kind of really square then, but it's surprising how quickly it turned around. Because really, people talk about the 60s, okay? Actually, what it was the end of the 60s and quite a bit of the 70s. You can't, things aren't, cultural changes don't stick to a timetable. Conveniently end at the turn of the year.
69, yeah,
that's absolutely when it was. And you're right. That's when it started. The book started. So what it was a lot of middle income teenagers that had just got out of high school or maybe were in college or whatever, had this expression. They were trying to find themselves, which was just an excuse for bumming around. And there's nothing the matter with that, But it was different because, well, back then you weren't afraid to hitchhike or pick up hitchhikers. You could always go somewhere if you knew somebody and they'd let you sleep on their couch. It was a much free and easy lifestyle for the young. and they took themselves seriously, which I seriously and having a lot of fun. But what I did is that I got into the picture on a smuggling venture. Originally, it wasn't me in the search of good dope. It was me on a smuggling venture trying to make enough money so I wouldn't have to go home to the United States and get drafted. So that was my motive that started everything going.
I understand, and that's amazing. And also, isn't it's a shame. And I mean, hey man, I'm with you on the porch if it sounds like us old men yelling at clouds, but I am so with you in terms of, because I remember a more gentle society that you could bum around and you could hitchhike. I mean, God, to the degree, and I'm sure you did this as a kid as well, before when I was a junior high school kid, it was, and living in Chicago, I could get on the subway or the L and go to Wrigley Field as a kid and not get hassled, or and parents weren't worried about me getting kidnapped or anything. And in fact, I even remember not Krishnas, but other organized religion on the train on one trip with me and a buddy, and this religious zealot coming up and Jesus loves you and started giving us literature and stuff. And this great guy is just like, hey, leave the kids alone. And she walked away. And it was great. And it's like, you guys are fine.
The Hare Krishna people were big in Philly. And they used to dance and chant out in the streets. But this was the good part. They would take you back to their headquarters. And they made delicious desserts. They had this little pastry they made with fruit inside of it, and everybody went to get the dessert. Not too many people were interested in joining the cult.
Okay. Were they loaded, or was it just like nice fruit pies or whatever they were?
They were nice people.
No, I realize nice people, but I'm saying, like, were they space cakes as you get nowadays in or infused in any way?
Mild people, mild mannered people, but you don't know if they got that way because they became part of that, or they were that way before. But anyway, they had great desserts, and some of the women were pretty.
Sure, absolutely, man. Well, that's why, again, I appreciate the outbound adventure of traveling abroad. And also, God, as you say, so you were smuggling to pay for the time as you stayed out, in Europe, or were you also like hoping to bring stuff home and sell it?
Well, we had big plans, and the adventure is explained in some detail in the book. But those big plans didn't turn out the way we thought they were going to. And, but maybe it was a good job they didn't. I really don't know. But we didn't get rich. But then Terry was always that way, started to enjoy what we bought back.
Okay. Yeah, your compatriot.
Yeah. So the fact that we weren't going to make a lot of money was, okay, that was a bummer. But here was something else that seemed much bigger and more important and more fun, that I didn't really worry about the money too much.
How many years did your journeys, the book can, goes on and a great surprise at the end of the book, but really, like, as far as the entire book, how many years are we talking about as far as the travels abroad?
I wrote, I think it was the opening to what turned out to be the preface. Right about a month after I got back from my first trip to Amsterdam. It was just 2 or 3 sentences. And I showed it to JR, character in there who travels with me. And he liked it. But I didn't do anything else for about a year. And then I started and worked really hard for quite a while. There were a lot of stops and starts for various reasons, but I kept going. And I thought I was finished, and then I found out that I wasn't, and that was a good thing because the finish is much better now. So it was, I would say that 10 years,
Great.
because
Yeah.
you get to the point where, you know, the publishing part, which takes some time.
Sure.
And yeah, so it was about 10 years, but it wasn't 10 years in a row, you know, day after day after day. I'd had some, like a boxer, you know, I had some flurries, and, you know, I had some times when I pecked at it, and, you know, writing's a horrible thing.
Regulars of Word Balloon Live video will know that Nigel has been on before as editor-in-chief of Ring, former editor-in-chief of Ring, current contributor to Ringside Seat. I imagine in a few weeks, because I got my digital copy of the magazine today sent to me, that we'll be having another conversation sometime
It was
probably.
a great issue, I thought. I
I'm
haven't
excited,
read
man.
anything, but the diversity of the stories really, really struck home to me. I mean, hey, if there's not something in there you love, if not all of it, there's something weird about you.
I'm
It's
hip.
really diverse, very diverse. I like.
Well, and also, truly, all of you writers, and pulling this back to the book and everything, you really do a great job of giving flavor of background, whether we're talking about a current contender or champion or some of the classic contenders and champions. And you really do get this texture of context of where these people come from. And you do a great job in Tales with Mary Jane for that matter as well. Like I said right away in the preface, I'm in the coffee shop with you. I'm in the, you know, coffee shops for the newbies. That's code for head shops and everything in Amsterdam. And again, by the way, coffee's great in Amsterdam. At least it was my experience. Everything's great in Amsterdam. Maybe because we're
Did you
enjoying
notice you always got a little something with your coffee? A biscuit, a piece of chocolate. That's anywhere, even the lowest diet, you got a little something, right?
100%, man. No, that's the beauty of Europe. And it was my first European trip 20 years ago, like literally a year before 9/11. It was during the final days of the presidential election between Al Gore and George W. Bush. That's when we went. And it was 5 days, and it was just amazing. And we were all 35, and some of us were married in my group. And the guys were like, well, let's just do one more trip while we're still young, relatively speaking. But we got to find, and we'd like to go to Europe, but let's find a city where the wives aren't going to be pissed. And literally, we're going around the room, and some of us smoked and some of us didn't. And it's like, well, all right. Well, obviously Paris is out because they'd kill us. Well, let's go to Rome. Well, you can't go to Rome because that's just as romantic. All right, fine. How about London? No, still cool. And finally, one of the stoners is like, Amsterdam. And they're like, yeah, that's great. It's cool. The architecture is amazing still, thank God. And, you know, it's a beautiful city, the canals and everything. And we can have fun and we can get loaded and it's legal and we'll have a great time. And it was so funny because some of the wives are like, why Amsterdam? Oh, now I know why it's Amsterdam. And they're like, fine, go
You should
ahead.
have told me you were going somewhere else and went to Amsterdam anyway.
That's true too. But no, man, and it is. It's so great. And as you say, centrally located. I mean, it's so right near all of Central Europe and everything. And
Well,
go ahead. Yeah, tell me about Amsterdam in
let
'67.
me add, because something reminded me of it, because you were talking about your trip. There's two sections in the book about two trips to Amsterdam. But really, they are a combination of half a dozen, maybe more trips.
Sure.
So everything's true in the book. But that's the only thing I really played around with was timelines, because,
Okay.
yeah, it makes it better that way.
Hey man, no, it make a good narrative. That's all right. It's great. And I would even recommend for people who are not of the pod culture that you're still gonna have a lot of fun because it's just got that great you know, it's like you said, you guys were smuggling, so it's kind of got that little crime line to it and everything, but really it's just this, like, all these characters. I mean, you mentioned Terry and but like Yellow Hat, give me some of the just like go through even a quick little rundown of some of the characters that we run into?
Well, my trips to Amsterdam, I took notes, not, just casual notes.
Go
But
on.
there
Yes.
was no notes when I was in Tangier or London or in the army and any of that stuff. I didn't have any notes.
Okay.
So it was all memory.
Sure.
And you'd be surprised what things come back to you when you're concentrating, trying to recapture stuff you did a long time ago. And sometimes there's something I remember that I'm not really sure about. Did this really happen? Or was it really this way? But I remember it this way.
I understand.
So, I made a decision. I'd keep it in if it helped move the story along, if there was some reason for it. And I wouldn't if it was just, another little story. So,
and also really the general reason for going, as you say, was smuggling. And you mention, and I forget the real guy's name, but the inspiration for the book and the film Midnight Express. And, hey, that was
Billy Hayes.
Terry Hayes?
Billy
Hayes. Thank you. Yes. Man, what a powerful movie. And what starts out as a very innocent kind of, prank.
Well,
this
I did the same thing as Billy, but
yes,
I was cool about it. He was sweating and nervous and all that stuff. There's quite a bit in the book of how I got in the right mind to do it. Maybe I was a natural. I don't know, but it's funny. We were there and did it before the movie was made. And that happened twice in the book. We were in Bruges. I think they might have already made the movie, but it hadn't come out, and we didn't know about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we found out about the movie, which is great.
About Midnight Express, yeah.
Oh, I was talking about in Bruges. But
in Bruges. I love that movie. I love that movie. Go on.
Going back to Midnight Express, it's a real story, right? So I saw the movie like I think damn near everybody did.
Sure.
And then I bought the book. And is hard to believe. The struggle to get out in the book, which is the real story, was really much, much harder than what he did. And he went through hell in the movie.
Yeah.
He just walked out the door. Remember at the end, just walked out the door. There were minefields and
wow.
it was a hazardous thing, but he made it. And I guess he made a little bit of money off the movie. It was a big success.
Yeah, I certainly hope a more happier ending than the struggle he had to go through. That again started as something very innocent and became this nightmare. Yeah. It's an incredible man. I don't know about you, but most like prison movies like that, I'll watch them once and I'm like, I never want to watch this again. I just don't want to go through that. That tension that the person's going through. Even like when Tom Selleck made his Innocent Man movie and he's in jail, I'm like, I don't never need to see this again. That's fine. It was an interesting, entertaining movie, but I'm like, that's fine. And I feel that way about Midnight Express. The chills, got it. Again, and so sorry, Nigel, because I don't want to make it about me, but I even pre 9/11. Well, but you're the guest, and I want to talk about your adventures pre 9/11. I didn't smoke pot until college. I really enjoyed it. It really helped the nerves and the tension of a new environment and stuff. And then all of a sudden in the 90s, I'm working at these two radio stations, and the rock station was founded by hippies back in the late 60s. And it always had that kind of hippie attitude in a good way. And there was just a great feeling of, hey, we can all have fun in a controlled environment and still break out pot, and that was not a big deal. So I found myself smoking again. And we would take trips. And now it seems so innocent, but again, in the pre 9/11 TSA searching every bag, security thing, friends would just very casually roll a couple joints, throw them in a hard box of cigarettes, surrounded by regular cigarettes, and nobody blinked. And of course, the X-ray scanners wouldn't pick them up. And yeah, I mean, I don't remember any international trips where they were that bold, but I do remember a lot of domestic trips. And I'm like, I was scared shitless. I wouldn't, I wouldn't travel that way, but my friends did. And yeah, so okay, great. We're getting high in Vegas, and to be in fact, as we'll talk later, a little bit about boxing. Yeah, man. I mean, not at the fights themselves, but certainly, I can remember many a time just enjoying myself and on a buzz, staring at the Vegas skyline and everything, going, all right, this is good.
Well, there's some benefit to going on and off. The longer you stay away, the higher you get for a while.
When you come back, yeah.
It's never like the first time, but
no.
It'll be closer.
Yes.
Be closer, yeah. I remember once I have a friend from Tucson who's lived in Germany for a long time now. And he lives in Dusseldorf, which is about an hour from the border of Netherlands.
Okay, sure.
And can't remember why I'm telling you this. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about him. In the book, he's known as Durazo. As everybody in the book is real or was real, people that were alive or people I could find, I asked them, you want me to use your name or make something up?
Sure.
Most of them wanted me to make something up, but a couple of them didn't. Like JR didn't, Jimmy didn't. But, there were some people who were dead and I couldn't do that. So it's that thing's fun. What I tried to do, like Charles Dickens used to make up these wonderful names that fit the people and their occupation and shit. I'm not that good, but I sort of made names that sort of sounded a little bit like, not, just reminiscent of or suggestive of, rather. So that's, and it's not, I think you'll notice that there's not a word about boxing in it.
No, which is good. Fine. You're stretching other muscles, man. That's cool.
Yeah, and still, there was sex in it, but there was no kiss and tell. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that to any woman.
No.
Yeah.
I understand.
So, there were rules, self-imposed rules, no kiss and tell. And that didn't hamper the story at all.
That's awesome, man. No, I get it. And again, it just does. It brings back this time when things were a little more innocent. People were a little more trusting, and on both sides, the person for the ask, like yourself, and the people that were like cool about it and stuff. And you can crash on my couch or whatever, or sleep on my floor.
You know how like good stories or good books or good TV shows have layers. Okay. The underlying layer is that for a long time I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to write a positive book about cannabis and some other shit.
Sure.
And that just laid around for a while until it started to take shape. But there was a big difference that I see. My generation getting high and the current generation and a few before. For us, people would probably think, this is a naive thing to say, or people might laugh about it. But let them laugh. It's true. It was eye-opening. It was revelatory. It was like, oh my God. It was, and I describe it that way in the book because I wanted people to know what it was like back then the first time. And it, and the same on the acid trip. It's just, but now I think it's just basically a party drug, weed or psychedelics.
Sure.
There's nothing the matter with that. But I don't think people were taking it because they wanted to know more or explore worlds that are a little bit different. You know how they say that life's like an onion? and there might be a reality right next to it, that's almost like ours.
Yes.
Well, pot does that to you,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
and it still works in that way. But I don't think most of the users are really thinking about it that way. It's just
I understand, Nigel. But also, the great thing is, I can only again speak of my own experience. It's that Aldous Huxley quote about doors of perception that open, and it's good to mention him on a nerd culture podcast. But yeah, I mean, it's and also some of our nerd heroes like George Carlin. I know, God had a great intense interview with John Stewart about his whole career, and said he had kind of pulled back from his heavy pot using days, but he would, he'd write material for himself, get a joint, just take one hit, and as he said, it was punch up time. And it's true. I mean, honestly, I can even say that in my own limited writing and performing experience, that I would get great ideas for sketches.
I found out in a really weird way. For 5 years, I commuted to Manhattan on a Greyhound bus.
Wow.
And I thought when I first did it that was crazy. Nobody else would do it, but there's hundreds of people that do it.
Wow. Yeah, I suppose
they run
so.
buses from Philadelphia to New York City, the Port Authority, every 20 minutes during the rush hour.
Sure.
And then it goes back to normal. But anyway, when I used to go up there, I spent all that time on the bus. You've been in a bathroom in a Greyhound bus. You know how they got little like windows that are like sort of like a triangle, right?
Yeah.
Right. What I would do is I would go in there and I would sit on the tank and put my feet on the seat, and I would have a little pipe and have some hash or some weed, and I'd smoke it and blow it out the window. And I did that almost every day, not going to work, but going home.
Sure.
And I also used to take manuscripts on the bus to edit with pencil. Well, if I needed to do that, and I began to notice in my own stories how boring they were, and I realized that what I saw and what I wrote in the margins and the things I shifted around was stuff that, where did this come from? And I was, it came from the bathroom at the back of the bus.
Well, Mike Nichols, I don't know if you ever heard him talk about this, but the great Mike Nichols, the great director and incredible improvisational sketch comic with Elaine May back in the day, he said that people don't understand, non-creative people don't understand the importance of that downtime when you allow your mind to truly relax. And that's when the interesting ideas come in. And certainly I am saying this as well. Cannabis helps your mind relax and takes your mind off the mundane, and it really just kind of frees you to experience what you're experiencing at the moment or not. And all of a sudden, like a bird suddenly darting across your eye line in a park or something occurs to you and something fires off. And I'm sure that there is some sort of chemical or brain synapse explanation. And I don't know if you've ever spoken to any neurologist or anybody else that could maybe even, give us that aha moment. We don't need it. It's okay. We get there doing our thing. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it makes a difference.
No, it's still the same way. I wrote a tribute to Kitten Hayward for the Boxing News in England, and that was strange. It's like I'm on the obit beat now. I did one for Hagler. I did one for Leon Spinks.
Yeah.
Wow. And because the people know, hey, he knows this guy.
Well, yeah.
He's old enough to have seen him fight. I was really thrilled. There used to be a timekeeper in Philadelphia, called J.J. Harrington.
Okay.
And he was a beautiful, kind, sweet man. And J.J. was nice to everybody. And if you were new and maybe a little bit uncomfortable, he'd look after you, you know. So there are some angels in boxing as well as some devils.
I understand, and I've had that experience here in Chicago. Good, Tim Adams, a great referee, really was very sweet to me, and would tell me good analytical things to look for when I'd watch fighters and stuff. Watch their footwork. This is why it's important to keep your foot out on the outside of your opponent to get better leverage on your punches and things like that.
Well, to get back to cannabis.
Yeah, please go on. Yes, indeed.
It was maybe a year or 2 years ago. I can't remember exactly. I wanted to write a story for a boxing publication about cannabis. Now, I didn't even try ESPN. I mean, they've got even words you're not allowed to use.
Yeah, too corporate, man.
And so I offered it to Bill for Ringside Seat. And he said it seemed more like a column to him. So I sold it to the British Boxing News, which is a week.
Great. I love that.
And basically what it was, that cannabis should be not on the banned list for boxers, along with steroids and the other stuff, human growth hormones, etc. And I actually contacted the commissioner in California and Nevada, because they are the two boxing states. They both agreed with me. And what's actually happening, that we're controlled in the United States. We signed on to be controlled by a worldwide drug enforcement agency. And as long as they have it on the list, even though the commissioners know it's bullshit, you know. So, and I also looked into baseball and football and ice hockey. Basketball, we don't have to look into. Baseball, they're so worried about the steroid scandal still. That really hurt them. They don't give a shit about weed, okay? Football, there was a guy that played for the Eagles only last year, was talking about it. He said they'd give us notice when it was coming up. So we stopped for a month or so, you know? And ice hockey, what are you going to do? It's legal in Canada.
There you go. Yeah.
So that piece was like my attempt to be a little helpful by just saying the obvious. But it was good that Boxing News had the balls to print it. The editor, Matt Christie, he said in an email that every day he gets dozens of stories about how this guy can beat that guy. And, you know, and basically that's what I try for in my boxing writing, to approach things from a different way, not the same old crap.
You know, I just reread your Boxing News article about this a couple days ago to prepare for this conversation. And I had to ask,
which article?
The one you're just describing, the British one. It's online.
Oh,
people can still grab it. It's in their archive. So, but I wanted to ask regarding cannabis and also a little boxing. A guy like Livingston Bramble, how did he manage to pass, tests and stuff? Because I know he was a Rastafarian, and forgive me, but I'm assuming that he was.
Well, I mean,
a weed user.
It's this thing has evolved. Back when he was fighting, I don't think they were checking for weed.
Okay.
I don't think they did. I don't know. But like, I know they were through much of Lennox Lewis's career.
The 90s, yes. So,
they would stop in time, I guess. That's all there is to it. It was stupid, but, a fighter, there's pain involved. There's certain strains of cannabis that help pain. This is really funny that, I said I wanted to write a positive book about cannabis. And this was some time ago that I started it.
How long ago, Nigel? How many years ago?
15.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Uh,
Early 2000s, yeah.
yeah, and so but you got to find a vehicle for that,
Absolutely.
and I finally found it. But all the things that were said by certain people came true. I mean, Bob Marley was telling us that it was medicine a long time ago. And look at all the medical benefits that have. I mean, it's like anything. Most all of our drugs came from somewhere in the Amazon, a root, a tree, or something.
Absolutely. Homeopathic remedy. Absolutely.
I think this marijuana is just Mother Nature's gift.
I
It's finally proved to be what I hoped it always would be, because I felt inside that it was.
I'm with you, man. I'm so with you, and I feel that way as well. Here, Ted has a good question about the book. He wanted me to ask you about the story in the book about how weed got you kicked out of the army. You said you were, smuggling and then traveling through Europe to
Basically, thanks, Ted. It's good to see your ugly face. I bullshitted my way out of the army, basically. The trick is to tell them just enough to make them worried, but not enough to hang you. It's, that's nothing new or magical. So I somehow knew that. And I was high the day that I was inducted. And they give you tests, to fill out. And I was delighted when I came across a section that said, have you used any of these drugs? And they had a whole list with a little box next to it. I was merrily crossing them off and shit. So something was telling me how far to go, when to hold back, when to go for it. On this test that has been developed especially for assholes like me to catch them up.
Absolutely.
But there was something guiding me beyond my brain. Maybe it was cannabis. I don't know. But in the long run, it worked. And I'm the first to admit that the main reason that I went to these lengths was that I didn't want to die.
Yeah.
Fuck you if you think that's bad, but I'm not ashamed of it. I'm glad I lived.
I'm hip, man. Yeah, no. And, even my more conservative cousins that were of drafting age were relieved when their number was, never called. People like that. I never knew anyone that went to Canada to escape the draft or anything like that. Again, it is, as much as this is a pro-cannabis weed book and stuff, it really is the experiences, too, of, I think, living in the 70s and
a lot of stuff is weaved in there that's not basically it's a travel narrative and a memoir.
Absolutely, man.
And the travel part weaves in stuff that sort of relates to the whole.
No, and again, much like cannabis, travel broadens the mind, and I would imagine experiencing these other cultures and stuff as a young man really tempered your attitude.
My parents always stressed that that travel was good, and I lived in 3 countries before I got to middle school. So I feel like Sherlock Holmes sometimes. There's a new adventure afoot. I get a certain rush from being somewhere I've never known before, and things come at you fast when you don't expect them.
Sure,
that's good, but so is old, comfortable, familiar things like the Greenhouse coffee shop in Amsterdam. It's all good.
Is it still there?
Oh yeah, I think so. What you got to realize is that I should advertise this. There's you learn the ropes there. And the greenhouse usually has some really good weed.
Good to know. All right, that's
Yeah,
cool.
and
I uh I hope to get back. I really do hope to get back. And I mean,
maybe
even
you'll come with
pre-COVID,
me.
it's been 20 years. What's that?
Maybe you'll come with me.
It'd be great. Good Lord. And also being at the rock and roll station in the 90s, they'd go to Jazz Fest every year and have a great time in New Orleans. But also a couple of our DJs and stuff would just, yeah, habitually like plan Amsterdam trips and just as you describe in the book. I mean, it really is easy. I mean, again, the affordability of the 70s made it even easier, but even now, it's a reasonable European trip. And again, that was one of the reasons why we at 35 are like, hey, let's do Amsterdam. That's going to be a lot of fun. And
Well,
and it
I
was
don't think as long as you're physically able and want to, you should make too many concessions to age. I'm still pretty much the same guy I always was. So, you can't say this is for teenagers, this is for old folks, this is for
so
those
true.
in between. You
Yep.
do whatever the hell makes you happy.
Absolutely, man. No, absolutely. And I really, like, are you doing? And again, I don't mean to sound like I'm looking over your shoulder like an accountant or anything like that. You doing? I mean, are you doing all right in terms of, you're able to pursue what you do from a freelance writing standpoint and make a
Um,
living and everything?
work is less now than usual because when the pandemic hit, both the Liqueur Center in Philadelphia and one of the casinos that reopened in Atlantic City were putting on pretty good fights, pretty big fights anyway, that they would show on TV. So, no publication wants a story about a small hall venue fight. So those were taken away. And I miss that. My bank account misses that.
Sure. Yeah.
So things are opening up a little bit. I think once again, Bob Arum was ahead of the curve. Um, Eddie Hearn caught on quickly.
Yeah.
But Bob, he's a really old fart. He's even older than me, and that's really old. And he's always ahead of the curve. He was the first big promoter that knew that the Latino audience was the future. It's not the future anymore. It's boxing.
Right.
So, there's a lot of reasons that people don't like boxing, and I can understand all of them. There's a lot of people that think smoking weed is wrong. I think the people that don't like boxing have a much better argument.
Well, and I can appreciate that from.
Yeah, people ask me, why am I still in boxing?
Yeah.
I tell them I've sold my soul to the devil, and everybody has a good laugh. But what it really is, it is addicting.
It is addicting.
It's really weird. Like, I know there's people in England that their local soccer club is like their religion, and maybe they're addicted too. But you hear guys saying, "Oh, I'm done." A little while later, you see them come back.
You're talking to somebody like that. Honestly, Nigel, I mean, my God, I started writing for Ring and Boxing Illustrated in 1989 and really moved more into Boxing Illustrated with Bert Sugar and had a blast and got to know him really well and caroused with him and wonderful times. And then around really the post-Lennox Lewis era, the Klitschko era, I kind of stepped away because it just wasn't exciting anymore to me. I walked away, but I have to say that in the last 5 years or so, it sucked, like Michael Corleone, it sucked me back in. And I would say that post-pandemic, this year in particular, Arum and Eddie Hearn, I mean, their matchmaking has been exceptional. And yeah, there's the usual. In fact, this past weekend, we had more lousy fights than good fights. But that said, I mean, I'm amazed, and I say this to your compatriots at Ringside Seat and my other boxing learned friends, that I'm like, am I nuts, or is it really, really good in a way that it hadn't been for years?
Yeah, the writing, or the writers rather, that Bill has collected, a lot of them are the old ring hands, and a lot of them are new, or some of them are new. And I think this issue is an example of all the stuff you can have, from something that's happening right now to something that never happened. It's like Joe Palooka really never happened, you know.
Well, yeah,
Was
sure.
referring to, but to see those cartoons and the covers, um, that's really cool. And you're a comic book guy, so I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know. Did you read the Joe Palooka? You haven't
Oh,
done it.
sure.
The Joe
Absolutely. And
Palooka
only,
story,
and,
yeah.
and yeah, and as I discovered them, I mean, I really read them more as an adult, but when I learned about them and the whole history behind Ham Fisher and making the comic strip, and also his even interactions with the guy who did Little Abner,
Yeah, Al
yeah,
Cap.
Al Cap, yeah. And I mean, so those stories were really interesting between the two of them in particular. But yeah, and I mean, I've seen a
Well,
few of the
you
movies.
notice you're talking about cartoon characters. The little blurb I have here at the beginning, before the table of contents, is dope will get you through times of no money. Better than money will get you through the times of no dope. Freewheeling Franklin, one of the fabulous Freak Brothers, were
Absolutely, man.
on TV.
That's great. I thought you were going to show the an illustration. No, I in fact I was talking about the Freak Brothers on Saturday when we were talking about the history of Comic Con, and again, that's one of the reasons why I was happy to talk to you, because this travel log and memoir represent that counterculture time, and I wonder, as not only someone who came for the '70s counterculture, but also being a boxing person, and I'm really excited about this book that's coming out that really is going to look at the level of where hip hop has really become part of the boxing culture. And what do you think of today's counterculture that has embraced boxing in terms of the hip hop generation?
Well, I mean, I remember that, when I had some music that my father hated, you know,
Sure.
and I had a very close friend who wanted an Elvis Presley album for Christmas, but his parents got him uh, a
Very cool.
gospel album,
Montavani.
Yeah. So I made a pact with myself that I would never freak out over other generations' music. I don't want to be like those people. Whether I like it or not depends
Sure.
on who it is and what it is. But I'm not, I've never told my grandson, don't listen to that. Or,
Oh yeah.
it's driving me crazy. So cannabis mellows you out in ways like that too. Don't sweat the fucking small stuff.
But no, I wondered if you've met any of, because it seems like DAZN in particular, they've got hosts that are covering boxing, and they're fans, and I love that fans are getting that kind of platform. But I don't know, have you met at any fights any of these current boxing commentators that really do come from the hip hop culture? And forgive the generalization, everybody, I don't mean to, but it just, I mean, again, well, and also we've seen it with the promoters like Triller, the new boys on the scene. And I mean, I watched that Tyson Roy Jones exhibition. I don't know if you caught it live, but it was as much of a hip hop concert as it was the few fights that they showed as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the fights are the most important thing.
Well, of course.
And I'll put up with a lot of bullshit if the fight's good.
Sure.
So I judge, like, a lot of people were against women boxing. I started the first and only and short-living women's column in the ring. I always felt that they deserved more than they were getting. And the reason behind that is that when they get in the ring, they're just boxers.
Of course.
That's the way I think of them.
Yes.
As I would think about a male boxer, is no different watching a female.
Yeah, talent, what they have in the ring.
And I tell you something. They made some of the women's fights are the best thing on the card. Regardless of their skill level, they usually give it everything they got. And
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I appreciate that.
I completely agree. Chris Cruz was a Chicagoan of the '90s that you're likely aware of, and I saw a lot of her fights, and I also remember I think it was the Tyson Frank Bruno rematch at the MGM Grand. And poor Phil Berger was like, Don King was pissed at him, so he put him in the auxiliary press section up in the rafters, and that's where I was, and I'm literally sitting with Phil Berger, like talking about the fights, and it was an honor to even talk to him and hang out with him, even at that fight card. But yeah, we were watching Christy Martin, whoever she fought back in the day, and we were talking about women's boxing, and thank God we are at the point now, because my concern was there were always good individual female fighters like Lucia Riker and the like, but there weren't enough really good opponents for them to rub up against.
That's changing, yeah,
and it is changing, and now we really are at a competitive level where it's like you better take the women seriously because they do, and like you said, sometimes that's the best fight on the card.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, their willingness to go all out is a big deal, because once you mix the skill in with it, you're going to be hell on your wheels,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to ask, I got to ask, because it's coming up on Saturday, the Pacquiao-Unis fight. Honestly, listen, Pacquiao is a person, not the greatest person. I'm disappointed at some of the comments he's made about the gay community and the like. That said, again, what happens inside the ring, what a story. I have compared him, and again, I'm someone who never saw Sugar Ray Robinson in his prime or in his twilight years, but it seems that in a lot of ways, Pacquiao is the closest thing we have in terms of still being effective at his age, now 42. All that said, I kind of think because he was preparing for Spence and now it's Unis, even though he accepted the fight, the fact that he's been out for 2 years and that Unis presents a different style and I think is a quick counterpuncher and bigger than him and has a 2-inch reach advantage, I'm smelling an upset, and I'm really thinking that we could, as much as people were probably thinking, Pacquiao will probably lose to Spence, but, it's still Manny Pacquiao. I think Unis has a good shot of causing an upset. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I agree with you. I think that, you have to remember that the odds that are set at various sportsbook are made to encourage betting, not to pick the winner. It's very often the same thing, but they could care less. They want the
action.
Revenue. That's what it's about. They want action. So as far as this fight goes, I couldn't argue with anything you said. Ugas is a good fighter. This is not a huge come down from Spence. In a way, the only come down is he's not as well known. Spence may be better than him, but he seems sort of like a train wreck right now.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see what he can do if he gets himself together physically, mentally. But yeah, I think this is going to be a good fight. Any fight that Pacquiao's in is going to be a good fight.
Agreed.
And I've been saying this for years now. Pacquiao will fight whoever gives him the most money. And I'm sure he didn't give up any money for this. Maybe he did, but I think he's going to make them to fight. They want him to fight. You got to fulfill the contract. Yeah, he'll go for anybody. If he's got he's about the money. And I don't know if we spoke about this before. Manny Pacquiao is a ruthless man with a soft heart, which is kind of a hard thing for people like me to grapple with. Can you be both? Maybe. We'll see. I mean, Bob Arum said years ago that Manny was going to be president of the Philippines.
May still be.
It may still happen. It's going to cost him a lot of money. He's going to probably spend everything he gets from this fight to become president, if he can make it even. So, I agree with you that I was terribly disappointed. The change in Manny's morals came when he changed denominations of his religion. I preferred the old drinking, whoring, gambling Manny because he was more fun to write about, and he was hell in the ring, man.
Yeah.
He didn't give a shit back then. Now, he's an amazing fighter. It's hard to separate the fighter from the man.
Yes.
But I think he's going to go in there and do the best he can, and that may be enough. There's this thing that happens to some fighters. Like I heard somebody tell me once, I won't say who they were. He was fighting Evander Holyfield. And he got in the ring, turned around, and I thought, oh my God, there's Evander Holyfield. That you don't realize. Thurman, last time.
Keith Thurman, yes. The guy
Bill Detloff, we watched together, who hates Manny Pacquiao for some strange reason, was touting Thurman. I don't know if he bet on him or not. But Bill said as soon as they got in the ring and Manny gave him that look, he thought, oh, shit.
Wow.
And so, how much of the oh, shit angle will affect this fight? That's just one of these intangibles. But because we watch boxing, we know. We know.
We think we know.
This has a shitty undercard. It shouldn't be pay-per-view. I agree with all of that.
I agree with that as well.
But I want to see it.
I want to see it as well.
If this is his last fight, it doesn't matter if he gets knocked out in the first round. He's in the Hall of Fame and has had an absolute fabulous career. So, but I don't think that's in his mind.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
No.
So I'm looking forward to it, even though everybody else seems to be,
disappointed.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And in fact, looking at the fair ratings and stuff, it's like, we went from, number 1 or 1A, depending on how you feel about Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, who's number 1, fighting number 2 or 3 in Manny Pacquiao. But now it's number 3, let's say, against number 6. And it's like, that's still a good fight. And again, Eunice has been active in these 2 years, more so than Manny has. And like you said, God, I have watched the films of, Ray Robinson's Twilight years, as many are out there. And the fact that, wasn't it Joey Archer, his last opponent, who at the time was the number 1 contender, and Ray Robinson was 44 years old, or however old he was when he fought him, and, lost the decision. And it's like, it's, and as you say too, just in general, as I'm in my mid 50s, it's like, don't tell me I can't enjoy myself because that's for kids. I texted you and told you I was at a concert yesterday.
Right. I saw the pictures.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna post more because our the Wi-Fi died at the stadium and everything. But it was great. And one of my friends who's a comic creator was teasing me. He's about 10 years younger. He's like, "Get out of there, old man." I'm like, "I got bad news for you, man. Green Day's been around for 30 years. So this is very much in my wheelhouse, seeing Green Day live. So don't tell me." And same goes for Weezer, the other band, and Fall Out Boy's the third band. Again, I don't expect you to know these names.
I'm trying to remember the last concert I went to. It was Gary Clark Jr. about 3 years ago. It was great.
That's cool. And remind me, because what band was he part of?
Gary Clark Jr. is a guitarist and vocalist that has his own band.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Yeah. I was expecting here, he was a member of the Byrds or something like that, or whatever.
He's a relatively young guy.
Oh, okay. And that was Gene Clark, by the way, as I remember.
He's in his 30s.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
He makes great music. He started out very young, lived in Austin, was basically, a blues player. and he made a couple of really great blues albums. But he's really stretching out
Cool.
to all kinds of different things, and but every one of them's got a great guitar break in it. You know,
That's great, man.
yeah.
God, I got to know Gail Sayers very well in the '90s, and he would do a football analysis show on our sports radio station about the Chicago Bears. And coming out of commercials, we'd always play rock music or whatever. And at the time, man, I'm like, Gail, who do you like? And he's like, I love Robert Cray. And Robert Cray, great blues guitarist and stuff. And I'm like, good news, man. You're at the right place because our sister station has everything from Robert Cray. You're covered. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
and he told me the times he met him and stuff, and what a thrill it was for him to meet Robert Cray.
We're very lucky in the Philadelphia area that
great music.
Pennsylvania University has a fantastic radio station.
Cool.
And Saturday nights for decades has been blues night. And I learned a lot from listening to that, and saw some of the people that they featured. There's a guy here, I apologize, I forget his name, who's hosted the show, and his knowledge is fantastic. Yeah, the blues are great. I love them.
That's cool.
I like all roots music.
Me too, man. Yeah. And that's kind of the new music that I still.
Getting back to this book.
Please do.
The street musicians in Germany and the Netherlands are the worst in the world. Oh my God, they are really, really bad. And I like street scenes, and certainly a lot of those in Amsterdam. I love street musicians. There was only one that was ever any good in all those trips, and he was a black guy. He was probably an American who was playing guitar and singing. I think they were bluesy, folksy songs, but they've got these accordions, and I love accordions.
Sure.
Flamenco music, Norteño music.
Oh yeah.
These guys were like, and sometimes they were accompanied by somebody with a trumpet or something. They were really, really, really bad. I've always been disappointed by the street musicians in those two countries.
Conversely, and again from my own experience in Amsterdam, the house DJs that were mixing with turntables and stuff, I got to tell you, one of the best experiences I had.
Where were you for that?
Oh God, I can't even remember the name of the coffee shop, but it was right on the water.
You know the music venue. I forget what it was. It's an old church.
Yes.
We went there, and that's a great venue.
Okay.
Palacido or something like that. It's called. I'm really embarrassing myself here that I should be able to tell you, but we saw a group in there from America called the Virgins. I was disappointed. They were all men. So I don't know.
Good, lot of comedy.
But, my friend that lives in Dusseldorf has taken me to some nice jazz clubs in Amsterdam.
Oh,
and
that's
he also
yes.
Several years ago took me and JR to the North Sea Jazz Festival in Rotterdam. And that was fantastic. There's a lot of there's more respect for good music in Europe than there is in the United States.
And especially jazz, 100%, man.
Yeah.
And you're right about that. And that you're absolutely right about that. No, again, it was just great to hear because it was really almost more ambient music than it was any sort of mixing of hip hop or popular music and stuff at this venue that I was at. And this guy was amazing. Again, it's
that's a whole new profession, disc jockey.
Oh yeah. No, you're right about that. And again, they're able to create new sounds with existing music. I mean, again,
it's really interesting. Some people think it's cheating, but I think it's kind of cool.
No, I'm with you on that.
You're
absolutely
adding something. Yeah.
Well, again, that's why, and shame on me for not having it at firsthand knowledge. But again, in November, this book is coming out about how the hip hop culture has transformed boxing and everything.
Yeah, what's it called?
What's that?
What's the book called?
I wish I could tell you. I could look it up while we're talking. Regardless, I do want to remind people again that here we go. Travels with Mary Jane.
Yeah, the confessions are. I don't know if they're raw. What would you think the confessions are? What word would describe my
Well,
confessions?
I think they're fun, and I think it's a great adventure with you. And again, I think your years of writing have given us a great context in terms of putting us in the action. And no, we're on the journey with you, man.
You want to take the people with you. You know,
Absolutely.
if you're on a voyage of discovery, it's good to take the people with you.
Definitely. Here we go. I found the Todd D. Snyder, and it's called Beatboxing: How Hip Hop Changed the Fight Game.
Todd B. Snyder.
Todd D.
The author.
Yeah. I don't know if you know him.
And what's it called again? How the beat?
How 1 second. I got to get back to it now. Beatboxing, all one word.
Yeah.
How hip hop changed the fight game.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
With you.
Maybe Bill let me review that for Ringside Seat. The book I reviewed for this issue, Lou Amber's biography.
Yes.
It was a mixed review.
Okay, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Because I am fascinated.
What was good was very good, and what was bad really was not too good.
That's sad and disappointing. It's funny you mentioned, how the local card scene kind of dried up during COVID. And I mean, again, being based in Chicago, that's the majority of the fights that I covered. And every now and then I entertain the idea of just putting out a book of essays of various fights that I covered. Because I was also, when I was writing for the magazine, mostly it was the Tanktown Chicago fights that Cedric Kushner was promoting. And, it was kind of a feeder network for his contenders to rack up a few wins. And then.
But I'm in a good position in that I have permission to use anything I've ever written for Boxing News. Ring and Ringside Seat, it's a sharing. Either one of us can use it.
Good.
So that I've got 3 sources. I've been trying to put together an anthology, but it's a hard sell.
Well, and again, I maybe, the guys at Ringside Seat can help you from a self-publishing.
Let's see something. There's more than enough ventures for the return of the old head. There's a lot I've experienced in this life that may be interest to some that I couldn't get it all in there.
That's good. Hey, I'm for volume 2. I think that's a great idea, man.
I'll give you a little piece. One thing I started to write about this, but for reasons that are rather confusing, it never made it in the book. Me and some other people once built a geodesic dome in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Another hippie thing. And that didn't make, it wasn't that it didn't make the cut, but the things were going haywire and I had to get some stuff done and it never made it. But,
okay. Well, yeah, man. No, I think that's great.
But we need to make some money off this one first.
Amen, son. And that's why people, again, you could pick up Travels with Mary Jane, Confessions of a 70-Year-Old Stoner, available at Amazon, and it is available in paperback and Kindle, and it's a steal at Kindle. But I understand you got a price to move. And I hope. What kind of feedback have you got, Nigel? I mean, truly, I've enjoyed I haven't finished it, but I've loved what I read, and I promise you a full book report when I finish.
Reviews on Amazon, they're all good. I think there's something like 11 5 stars and 1 4 stars.
Wonderful.
But that's a very small sample size. The one thing I will say, nobody who's read it has told me it was shitty.
No, it isn't shitty. Have you approached?
They got that going for me.
Absolutely. Have you? I mean, did you make High Times and the other cannabis publications aware of it?
There was a big effort when it first published that I sent out review copies to everybody I can think of, including the cannabis culture and High Times. And Colorado has a lot of now big glossy magazines that are basically ads for dispensaries.
Sure.
We have some stories in there. I tried everything.
Good.
I even sent it to the BBC, it was like everything I could think of. And nobody reviewed it except for Don Stradley.
Ah.
and he's a friend.
Yeah.
So, but it was, he did a beautiful job on it. And then more recently, things have been picking up ever since I came out of the closet, so to speak, because the years with ESPN, I could not let on that I wrote this sinful book.
Sure.
The Mickey Mouse would be appalled. And I managed to keep it quiet. And since I've come out, sales have picked up. Not what we want, but you can see that there's a difference.
That's wonderful. Well, I certainly hope us talking tonight will drive people
to
the book as well.
We've, piqued some people's curiosity.
Absolutely. Here, I gotta put up that other picture of you. There you go.
Oh yeah, there it is. I like that one. That's on the back of the cover of my next book.
Oh, on the next book, really? On volume 2,
I like it. It's like that's outside the greenhouse. That was about 2018, and I'm holding a mighty powerful joint. Almost missed my train to Dusseldorf.
I was in New York, and a friend handed me a pre-roll joint, and in fact, even actually this summer I had one, and I was really surprised about the potency because I'm so used to my friends who have given me the opportunity to get weed from them and purchase it from them and stuff. And the dispensaries in Chicago, I'm thrilled that it's happening, but right now the prices are still ridiculous. And my friends in Portland, Oregon had told me that's how it was initially in Portland. And when the owners of the dispensaries realized that the people who had regular weed connections were just going to stick to their people, they finally realized, and eventually the prices came down. I would imagine
there's a dispensary in Colorado. There's 2 of them. They still send me emails every week. They have specials. They have sales. They have, it's. But my advice to everybody who smokes cannabis, buy the most expensive. That's going to be the best. And you don't need it. It'll last for hours, the first pipe.
Oh my God, yeah. Absolutely.
Go for the best, and that way you won't be disappointed. And at this point, that's expensive.
I hear you, man. Well, that's why I was saying with my New York story. The guy gave me a pre-roll joint, and I'm like, and I took a couple of hits, and I'm like, all right, fine. And then I'm like, wow, this is a lot stronger than I expected. And my friend was so worried because
what you should do is roll a joint and slowly smoke it as you read the rest of the book.
Good idea.
There you go, man.
Exactly.
I've given you permission from the old head to get high and read this mother.
Absolutely. Nigel, great conversation, man. And I promise
All right, this was fun. Thanks for your help. I appreciate it more than you know.
Oh, man, dude, are you again? Truly, thank you for the years of great entertainment, reading your columns and your articles. And it's great. It was great to learn that we had this in common as well as boxing.
You can read it tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's all I got. I'm going to click off now, man.
Do it. No, you've been great with your time.
One day we will come together and meet.
I certainly hope so, Nigel, and I hope you'll join us for the next time.
Blues clubs in Chicago?
Oh, absolutely, man. No, it'd be my pleasure to sing. Up, he left. All right, fair enough. That's it, guys. He was done with this conversation. I'll email him later. But no, I'm really. This is a great writer, and here I'll even put this on my face. Boom. You got to read this book, man. If you're at all interested in the counterculture, you're gonna really enjoy it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Word Balloon. Thanks to the people that chimed in and that were watching. We're back to regular Word Balloon programming in the days ahead, I promise you. I'm pre-recording a conversation with John Ostrander, the creator of Suicide Squad, the modern Suicide Squad, I should say, because, of course, the old military Task Force X was a Silver Age thing before John got his hands on it. And that's going to be great. We're going to pre-record that tomorrow and present it later in the week. Rob Salkowitz will be joining us as well. So many interesting things happening in comics and in the comic culture right now. Substack suddenly joining the mix in terms of platforms and where creators are going to be generating comics. What does that mean? That and also really, again, almost a report card on how the last 17 months have been in the pandemic era. I talked to Rob early on in the pandemic last year. It's the last time we spoke. and wanted to give us a little more time and perspective to look back and reflect at 2020 and now late 2021. So there you go. Thanks a lot for watching. And until next time, as I always say to end every